Hey, happy gosh, what day is it? Tuesday. I had to think about that real quick. Thank you for those of you who are on, who are joining us. I'm incredibly excited about my collaboration I'm having today. It looks like I can see my y'all got my tea over here. That's why you see some steam. Um I'm really excited about the collaboration I'm going to have today with Chantelle Simone. Many of you guys are familiar with. She's been getting a lot of buzz and getting a lot of popularity in the space. So I'm so happy to have her on. Just real quick before we get started, please get the likes up. Tag anybody on this discussion who you think may find it interesting. We're going to be talking about double standards. Also, in the interest of time, I'm only going to be answering those super chats right now. If you have any burning questions, I'm only going to answer those super chats just because we're trying to get through things rather quickly. So if you guys have any burning questions, feel free to send those in. As always, if you'd like to support the show, you can find me on Cash App or Venmo, Shay Charday. And then also, if time permits, towards the end, if we have enough time, then we may open up the phone lines and have a discussion. So yes, if you're on, get the likes up. And then without further ado, I'm going to have our special guest on. Hey.
Hey, Sade. Hey, chat. Happy Tuesday. I forgot again.
I had to think about that low key. I was like,
The days just be going by so fast. It's
they
so
really
crazy.
do. Like, especially I feel like you start getting close to the holiday. It's just like one big day. They don't
Yeah.
really distinguish themselves. And then here it's like, it's mostly night now that it's winter. It's more night than it is day. So it's like, yeah, I don't know.
That doesn't help. That definitely doesn't help.
No, it definitely does not. So
But hey, good night. Thank you so much for having me on your platform. I'm looking forward to this conversation. This is exciting.
yeah, no, me too. Me too. Like I said, I know you've been getting a lot of buzz in the space. Sounds like you've been, making your way, and I'm grateful to have you on. I'm grateful to have you on, and just to, talk about these different things. So,
Thank you.
yeah. So, I mean, let's just hop right into the topic. Let's just talk about it. And so, for those of you who don't know, we're going to be talking about double standards. So here's the thing. As many of you guys already know, without me having to go into it, society has double standards. It just is what it is. And I wanted to sit down and just have a conversation with Chantel about some of these different things and really get down to the bottom of, okay, like, what does this actually mean? How is this impacting us? And um, you know, how to do better. What is this, how to do better, how to improve, or is just is what it is. So I have a few questions I wanted to, yeah, just run by you and get your perspective.
Mm-hmm. Let's
So
do it.
so here's something that I notice a lot within the space. First question. So it is oftentimes I feel like, especially now with the whole divestiture movement, we see it becoming more and more popular for Black women being praised for getting with white men or with lighter non-Black men.
Mm-hmm.
A ton of praise associated with that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with Black men, we see that being demonized. And so my first question is, why do you feel that men are demonized for having light skin preferences, but Black women are celebrated for having light skin preferences? What do you think that's about?
I mean, honestly, and as the topic of discussion today, it's just the double standards. I
Double
think
standard.
yeah, I think, and I mean, it sucks, but we're speaking reality. This is what happens, all right? Um, Men aren't held at the same standards. Women, or flip it, women aren't held at the same standards men are held at. Men tend to be required to stay, because I know we're not talking about dating out. We're just talking about dating within the race, but just dating light skin, or are you referring to dating out?
I'm just saying. Well, that's a good question. I would just say in general, from what I've noticed, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I've noticed that so there's a situation where it almost seems like when it comes to preferences, right?
Mm-hmm.
Black women can do no wrong, and
Mm-hmm.
Black men can only do wrong, right? For example, a Black woman can date a white man. Like I remember listening to a broadcast maybe like a month or two ago, and it was a divestiture broadcast. I was just trying to listen to the ideology, and in there's one woman in particular basically make a long story short, she ended up dating a Nazi and she wasn't even aware of it. The guy had like some, I think it was like a Nordic tattoo. It was something that's
Mm.
really, really common with white supremacy. And she's talking about it, and everybody in there is just like, oh my gosh, because he's like, he had this really cool tattoo and this long blonde wavy hair, and like everybody in there's really excited. And I'm like, she's dating a neo-Nazi. She has no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Now flip that, if I was to flip that conversation and it was a, it was a black man over here, just like, oh man, she has just such beautiful blue eyes and just long blonde wavy hair. Like if I was to flip that, and we knew that this black man was dating a white woman who was a white supremacist or just a white woman, period,
Mm-hmm.
there would be hellfire. So so
Mm-hmm.
so that's what I'm saying. It's like, okay, and even if it's not that, even if you are within the race, but a black man is dating a lighter or biracial, there's ideology right out there that says, okay, biracial women aren't black, which to me, historically speaking,
Mm-hmm.
biracial people, light-skinned black people are still treated like black folks. Yeah, that maybe they have closer proximity to whites. We can talk about that, but they still are treated like black folks when we look at the law, when we look at historically. So that's what I'm saying. Preferences, it can include light skin or the exoticals. It can also include non-white.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, that helps, and that actually plays a good point in what I was about to say. So you see, for in society, black men are expected to stay loyal to his people, to black people, while black women aren't held at the same standards that black men are held at. So when black women love to play victim, and we know, taking it out to race, women in general play victim and men don't play good victims, right? So when black men date out, it's like, oh, you're abandoning us, you're leaving us for the other side, and that tends to be frowned upon more than if a woman, because I mean, in her head, she's a victim, and these women treat non-black men so much better than they treat their black men, just down to the respect, the basic respect that they have. They will never talk about a non-black man how they talk about, how they discuss, black men. So for a black man to date out, they're seeing it as not only as you're disloyal, you're abandoning us, you're not staying true, staying on code, but also it's showing them that, okay, if he is not respected, hey Danica, shout out to Danica.
Hey, what's up? Thanks for stopping by.
If he is not respected on the basic of the basic, and then he's getting respect from somewhere else,
Mhm,
because we see it where it's in our culture, it's out of habit where we talk down about our black men and we
mhm.
disrespect our black men, but then if they were to go to somebody who respect them, then we also talk. So it's kind of like we don't like, they can't win, they can't choose. And I mean, it's unfortunate, but by having these conversations, we're bringing it to light, because it is what it is. And we see this. We see black women being praised when they date out, and then we see black men being called a sellout when
When
when he date.
when they
I,
do
I can't say I see the whole light skin thing a lot though. When black men date light skin girls, I personally, I don't see it, but we definitely do see the dating out
if
aspect.
right, if you're familiar, well, maybe just because I've been doing my due diligence, if you will, like just
Hmm.
listening to more of just different leaders in the space. And so I've stumbled upon quite a few influencers who, make a long story short, hate against light skinned women. Like
Hmm.
straight up have entire platforms that are pro dark skinned women and then hate against light skinned women. And they have everything
Man.
from the preferences to the exoticals. I mean, to me, it doesn't make any sense because I'm like, at the end of the day, you can stop by the police. It is what it is. I don't care how what I mean, how light. I mean, even if you've seen the Colin Kaepernick documentary, as light as he was, the amount of racism that he experienced. So that's why I'm just like, to me, it's insanity. But it does exist, like the light skin versus dark skin. There's historical evidence to that, but like some females be hard over that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I believe you 100%, because even honestly, when I got into, like, started watching videos in the manosphere, that's when I got introduced to the whole colorism. And because I
okay.
don't, maybe because being raised in Jamaica, we don't really pay attention too
Mhm.
much to colorism and racism as much. as you know, Americans do. So maybe that's why I wasn't really paying much attention to
Mm,
it. But being in the space and hearing so many women talk about colorism is like colorism for every, like it's like another excuse. Oh, he didn't like me because I'm dark skinned. Growing up, I never thought of that as a reason why a guy didn't like. So it just goes back to show it's what you're surrounding yourself with, and it's the narrative that you're constantly repeating. That's what's going to manifest in your life.
right. You know, I certainly, I think I would be dishonest if I was to say that there wasn't ever a point in time, and there aren't still some people today who very much are colorist. I mean, you've heard it from yellow bone, red bone. Like I remember dating one guy, and he was like, "Oh man, you're the darkest thing I've ever dated," as if that was like a compliment. And I have dark skinned friends who, they've had situations like that. So I know it can exist on some level, but my thing is, I don't think that that's necessarily, my personal opinion is that that's not the primary issue among black men and black women. I don't. Most black men are looking and saying, "Oh, wow, she's has a great personality. She's beautiful. She's cooperative. You know what I mean? She's submissive. She can cook good, but I won't marry her because she's dark." That's never happened. Usually, it's like she has a bad attitude. You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly,
and so
exactly.
I think most men versus being turned off by the color of their, if she's dark or light or caramel or, whatever, it's more like, are do you actually, are you nice? Like, do you actually know how to smile? Like, just basic, we're talking basic stuff. And so, to your point, I do think while there are issues, some of the things are just a result of living in a society that's racist.
Yeah.
I think more often than not, some of these things end up being used as excuses to deflect from what's really going on, which is like, sis, you actually don't have manners. You're hard to be around. That ain't got
A
nothing to
hundred
do with your
percent.
skin. That's just like, can you smile? Like, can you not be mean?
100%. And then we even, I know a
Oh,
couple months ago we had that whole pretty privileged conversation going around. And I
right.
mean, we can argue that point too. Yes, pretty privilege do exist, but
Mhm.
is
Right.
that the only reason you're not being chosen? To keep it fair and balanced. But to bring it full circle back to the question that you asked, I
Right.
think I think it's because black men are held at a higher standard and higher expectations than black women, and they are expected to be loyal to the black community regardless of how much they're being put down, how disrespected they're being. They're expected to be loyal, and that's why they get so much pushback when they date out. But when a black woman dates out, she gets all these praises because it's they value non-black men over black men. So when a black
Right.
woman dates
Right.
out, he gets the praise because, oh my gosh, someone who is better than our own picked you.
Right. So you think it's somewhat, it's double standards, right? Hence the name of this thing. And then also it sounds like what you're explaining is a bit of internalized self-hate. If you're saying that some of us black women will be like, "Oh, he's white, so therefore he's better."
Oh, most definitely. And you did a
Right.
great job when you touched on that when we did our collab on my
Right.
channel. Like the fact that you will praise the idea of dating someone that doesn't look like you, that no, you're not, that doesn't share your skin complexion, you're praising that idea.
Right.
um we have these women who they would rather date a Pookie and Riri, a non-black Pookie and Riri, than a established hardworking black guy.
Yeah,
And
that's
in
facts.
keeping
That's
it,
so facts.
yeah, and that has to be self-hate right there, because that he reflects you.
Whew, girl, that's a whole nother topic. But
Mhm.
because that will take me half a day to actually break down. But thank you for the super chat. I see Skizzy, pretty panel. Appreciate it. Eugene Steele, I see you. This is the difference between the sisterhood and the brotherhood. Yeah, no, I think he's talking about the double standards. And then Marco Polo, my beautiful pick me chicks cam up. Yes, we cam up. We do that. Again, for those of you who are on, please get the likes up. Tag anybody on this conversation you think may find it interesting. We are talking about double standards, just in relationships, within the black community, all that stuff. So okay, so I want to move on to the next question. Um, why, in your opinion, why do you think that we are allowed to criticize men, but we're not allowed to criticize women without being demonized. And I know you can speak to this personally of some of the experiences that you've had of late, but I'd like to have you expound upon that a little bit more.
And you know what? You as again, you touched on it. You touched on a great point when we did our collab when you said, in our culture, it's never check mama. The woman is always right.
Mhm. Right.
Never question her decision. Always respect her, no matter what, no matter how she treats you, no matter how she disrespects you. Always respect her because we are queens, we're goddesses, we're empresses, we're Mother Nature, and that's where it comes from. Constantly getting validation, constantly hearing that you do nothing wrong, all these talk shows, all these reality TV shows, social media posts, everything is telling Black women how great we are by simply being Black. We were born Black, so we are queens, we're goddesses, and we have our womb, so that's all we need to bring to these relationships. And then you hear someone now saying, wait, nah, like, nah,
Right.
you got,
Like,
you're
you
human
gotta
too.
have right.
You have work to do too. Of course you're going to take backlash to that because you didn't hear anything other than you're perfect. And if somebody come and tell you, showing you your imperfection, not to shame you, but so you can get better, you're going to take backlash to that. On the flip side, though, Black men were raised to hear how Black men ain't sugar, honey, iced tea, Black men don't step up, Black men aren't reliable, all these things. So it's like out of habit to criticize our Black men, literally out of habit. A
Right.
couple months ago I was talking to a friend, and it's so funny because it was the weekend after her wedding, so she has her nice Black man that's, put a ring on it, respectable Black man who's taking care of stuff. And I was talking to her, we were just having girl chat, and then she said, ninjas ain't sugar, honey, iced tea. And then she said, wait, I don't know why I said that, I have a really good Black man. And it's like, it's
Wait, she said
out
that
of
after
habit.
getting she got like wed, married to a Black man, and that came out of her mouth.
But we say, and you know what I mean by ninjas. We, saying the
Right,
full
right, right, right.
slang. And when sugar, honey, ice, so you guys know what I mean. So when you say that, we
Yeah.
say that so often out of habit that we don't even know that we're saying it. It's just, so even if we do have a good Black man in our life, even
Mhm.
if we have someone who is protecting us and stuff. And I had another situation on a Facebook post. This is a good couple months ago, probably like 2-3 months ago, when I posted that these women are demanding the men to be protector, be provider, to step up, but they're not bringing anything to the table. And a young lady responded and went in on the comment and said, but these Black men ain't providing, and these Black men ain't. And then I was like, wait, but aren't you married
I'm like,
to a
do you
Black
know
man?
history?
So what are you saying about your Black man? And she responded saying, oh, well, not my Black man though. So it's like we're at the point where even if you have a good Black man in your life, even if he's providing, protecting, and doing everything that you desire him to do, you're still coming on social media to talk down about Black men.
You know, there's so much you just said. I mean, first of all, I think you're completely right. But I mean, there's so much to that because just a little. I mean, you don't even have to go deep. Just a little mini history lesson will completely break down all of those lies. I'm like, if it wasn't for Black men, we wouldn't even. I mean, we wouldn't even be able to have the ability to go online and create channels that are anti-Black male if it wasn't for Black men. We wouldn't even have .com. We wouldn't have the internet. We wouldn't be able to go on our phone, do these different things. Like there's so many modern amenities that we have today that are because of Black men that it's like, to me, just the utter insanity. And to me, it's like it's also disrespectful. It's like if I think about the different ancestors, generations before us, who, I mean, they marched, civil rights, they were fighting back in slavery to give us freedom, like all the different things that they did to give us some of the modern communities we have today. It's like, are you completely unaware of anything? Like, have you ever cracked open a history book? Like, were you asleep in class? It's just like, where are you mentally? But to your point, I think there's money to be made. There is money to be made off of this culture of man hating, and especially Black male hating. There's money to be made. I mean, I mentioned this in another video that I recorded where um it was, I don't even remember the name, but it was basically it was one to me. I think it was like propaganda, just to be perfectly flat. It was like a propaganda video, and it was talking about why black men are horrible and why you should divest. And this person has had, I think, has only created like 2 or 3 videos, and I go on their channel and I'm seeing hundreds of thousands of views, and I'm like, wait, she only has like 3 videos, but I'm seeing hundreds of thousands of views. But it's every last video is, this is why you shouldn't believe in black men, divest from Blackistan, all this kind of different stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is popular. Women are being rewarded for this financially.
And there is definitely money in talking down about black men. Just look at YouTube in itself. You don't have to go anywhere outside of YouTube. As I mentioned yesterday on a collab I did, I think Danica, and correct me if I'm wrong if you know any other content creator, but Danica is one of the only female content creator that talk positive about black men that has over 100,000 subscribers.
Right.
All the other content creator that sit there and talk crap about black men, 200,000, 300,000,
Right.
sometimes in the millions, and they sit there and talk day in day out and talk and complain about black men, complain. And even if their channel didn't initially start off complaining about black men,
Mm-hmm.
eventually they switch and start complaining and
Mm-hmm.
start indirectly saying certain jobs, never praising them. Because if how in the states in which our culture is and the states in which our black community is, if you're not praising black men, you're downing them, because for so long they've been disrespected, for so long their flaws have been highlighted. And I'm not
Right.
sitting here to say black men perfect.
Nobody is. I don't think anyone
Nobody
is.
is.
Yeah.
And I have had my share of dusties. I have had my
Right.
experience, and I can agree, like I can relate to some of those women experiences. However, to just sit there and make hundreds of videos highlighting the few dusties that you choose today, that you choose to open your womb and give your womb to, and then to put that on all black men, it's unfair. So if you're not sitting there saying positive things about black men, and you're indirectly saying, oh, they're not coming through, or they're in jail, or they don't take care of their kids, you're part of the problem.
Right.
You are a part of the problem.
Right. No. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, like I said, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, so many, that's what I actually found out. When I first started getting on YouTube a few months ago, my husband, he warned me, and I don't think he warned me. He was like, you're going to come across a lot of channels that are hating against specifically black men. I don't know if I didn't want to believe, but I was like, no, like I'm sure they're out there, but it's not going to be that bad. And like, man, was I humbled to find out that like some of the primary channels, some of
Yeah,
the literally primary, to your point, thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers, and
yeah.
sometimes some of them will be even more. It may be more like, oh, you're a makeup artist, or you're a musician, or you're this. Like, it won't even necessarily be like I'm specifically talking about relationships, but it's like, but then they kind of slip it in here and there. And like I
Hmm.
said, I was a little disheartened. I'm not even gonna lie. And I'm like, this is bad. This should not be celebrated. And we can't sit here and act like this is healthy or normal, because what we don't understand is that by us hating against 50% of us is essentially we're hating against ourselves, and that is the
Hmm.
quickest way towards the path of genocide. That is the absolute quickest way. And by the way, anybody who sits here and believes that white is right does not know white people, has never had a honest conversation with a white person, has never sat down and had a heart to heart. Because I'm like, some of my closest friends who are not black, who are non melanated, have the most horrible, dustiest, low down, pookie and Ray Ray situations out there. So I'm just like, some of these very women who are just like, oh, you just go get you a Brad. I'm like, you never actually talked to Brad. You never
Hmm.
went to class to
Hmm.
Brad. You
Hmm.
don't know Brad, because if you did, you wouldn't be saying what you just said.
But you know what, Sade? They have this mindset, and I sympathize because I know where it's coming from.
Right.
The first relationship a woman have with the opposite sex is with her dad, and many of us, for whatever reason, didn't have our dads in the household. Many of us got disappointed by our dads, right?
Fair.
For whatever reason, because you remember we're here in our mom's side, so for whatever reason, we are being disappointed by our dads. And that's why when I say, and then I see Danica in the chat saying, there's money in pandering to women, because I could have got on YouTube and talk about my story about my dad when he wasn't there, he wasn't showing up, and I would have gotten views. People
Oh,
would have been
definitely,
here. But
definitely.
it's like, how long are you going to sit in your pain? How long are you going to sit in your hurt and complain about something that you couldn't control? And to your point, when you said, even if these channels aren't relationship based channel, even if they're not there to talk about, they're doing their makeup and they're venting real quick about experience they had with a black man, it
Right.
turns into man hating, it turns into bashing, and misery love company.
It
And when you're
definitely
going through your pain, when you're going through your hurt, and you hear somebody, if Sade does something to me, I'm gonna find, and I do not like Sade, I'm gonna find someone who equally does not like Sade, and
right,
we're gonna sit
right.
there and talk about Sade for forever.
That part.
And that's what we're seeing in the space. And then you have women like myself, like Sade, like Danica Marie, like River, talking up and praising black men. Not to say that all black men do no wrong and they're just gods and they walk on clouds, but to highlight the positive black men that we have in the community. Then they're like, oh, who are you to not talk negatively
Mhm.
about black men?
Absolutely.
And it's
Absolutely.
disgusting.
Yeah, no, I mean it really is. Shout out to Bernard Riley for the $20 super sticker. Thanks for stopping by. I also see Marco Polo. Thank you again for the 9.99 super chat. Appreciate it. And yeah, like I said, to your point, there's so much work that needs to be done. But like I said, this is why I'm glad I can sit down and have open and honest conversations and say, not only is this delusional, like we need to stop. This is not cool. This isn't healthy, and this does not need to be celebrated. So
And we just need to, the more we have these conversation, and this is why I'm pushing, like I've been getting a lot of requests for collabs, and I'm only accepting pick me collabs, because I'm
you
like,
pick me collabs. That's funny. I
because
said,
we
I
need
don't
to
even
push
know.
this narrative.
Right. Like I said, I didn't even know that. Like, again, I didn't know pick me was a thing and was so negative. But I'm like, look, I'm happy to be counted among the pick me.
Exactly,
The past week,
exactly,
as Danica says it, because I'm like,
exactly. I'd
this
rather be a
nasty
pick me than a
culture is
passive
like,
defender.
come on now.
Exactly. But we need to drown out that negativity. We need to drown out, because it's so loud and it's so much. And until we start calling them out, until we start shaming them, it will not change. And then also, um men don't make good victims. So men aren't going to come on and say, oh, Bobby said
Not.
I'm doing a tour. I know, right? I just
That takes me to my next question, but I'm gonna let you finish because right,
men aren't going to be good victim. Men aren't going to cry about, oh, they're talking bad about us. On Men are just going to see it
that's your
and,
experience,
and move on, right?
right?
What I'm doing this for is the little boys, because these young boys, these black boys who are coming in themselves, these black boys who are trying to find their identity, coming on social media, coming on, being around women and hearing men in sugar honey iced tea, all men do this, all men do that. What are they going to internalize? How are they going to see themselves? And we need
Right.
to be careful how we talk about men, black men, around our black boys, if we ever want to change the cycle.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. It's like there needs to be honest, constructive conversations. What we hear oftentimes is not honest and it certainly isn't constructive. It's propaganda. I mean, most of the time it's just downright propaganda. Like y'all just making up stuff. You're taking truths that are maybe halfway true, but then you're twisting it to your own narrative. It's garbage. So yeah. So like I said, that's something that, we just gotta keep it pushing and know that, yeah, that may come with hate, but what's going on now needs to stop. You know what I mean? So now, but this takes me, what you mentioned earlier, it takes me to one of my next questions. So you may or may not be familiar with this, but I've heard this a lot lately, right? This idea that women cannot really be women until they are around a masculine man, right? And so there was one popular femininity coach. I actually saw a video a few weeks ago and she was talking about, she's basically was like, when I get around a masculine man, like, oh man, I can just rest on my femininity. But if I'm in a man who's weak, then I naturally get more masculine. So there was this idea of like conditional femininity, right, where your femininity, you turn on or you turn off based upon the strength of that man around you. My question is conditional masculinity acceptable, Meaning a man comes in a situation and says, okay, I'm only going to be masculine for you if you, I don't know, cook, clean, are pretty, submissive, whatever. Are men allowed to be conditionally masculine just as women are allowed to be conditionally feminine? What do you think?
Okay, and that's a really good question. And before last week, I would have answered it completely differently than how I'm
Mhm.
about to answer it because I'm doing my research, and as I always said, that I'm
Okay.
still learning. All right, and thank God, Black women tried to cancel April Mason because then they introduced her to me. See, when the Black community tries to cancel people, that's when they get introduced, and that's when they get pushed.
Hmm.
So April Mason did an interview, and she talked about how, as women, as humans, we both
Mhm.
have masculine and feminine traits. As women, you have majority of your feminine trait. You do have some masculine trait. Your masculine trait is required, when you're in certain situation, it
Yeah.
requires you to tap into your masculinity. However, majority of the time, you're in your femininity, you're in your, feminine
Right.
traits.
Right.
Same for the men. Men have majority masculine energy traits when it's appropriate, like when they're talking to a baby, for example, they're not gonna be masculine, blah, bit, they get into they tap into their nurturing side. I think there are two sides to that question, and that's why I mentioned that. If we're talking about that, then yes, sometimes you're at work, it requires you to stand up, be assertive, and tap into your masculine, but then go back into your feminine when when that situation is done. And then a lot of these women though, and how I'm assuming that why you brought up this topic, because a lot of these women will walk around in their masculine 95% of the time, always in that masculine, thinking that they can just switch it off and go back in that feminine when they're around a man, when they're around a masculine man. And it doesn't work like that, because even as a feminine woman, even when you have to tap into that 5% masculinity. If you're in a board meeting or something, you're still holding as a feminine woman, just tapping into that masculine trait. So you're still feminine. Um,
Right. Well, and that's what yeah, I hear what you're saying because I tend to believe, I don't think, it's just my personal opinion. I think either, I mean, you're masculine or you're feminine. And the reason I say that is because men are never really given the option to be feminine. It's not like, if a guy comes in and he's just like, oh, he's like, oh, I couldn't pay the bill today, or I couldn't pay the bill this week because, I went into my feminine side and was emotional. You know what I mean? Like that stuff
yeah,
doesn't
I
matter.
mean,
So that's what I'm saying. I'm like,
like,
I think, hmm
I think when we turn the question then and focus on your dominant trait, like, what trait are you leading with majority of the time, like who are you, then in that situation, yeah, men can't just say, oh, I'm gonna be feminine until you prove to me, until you
right,
you prove your feminine side to me, then I'll be masculine. So to answer the question like that, yeah, a lot of these women, like I did a video some months ago when Kerry Hilson made her long post, and all these women were reposting it as if she said something significant when
hmm
she said that, a strong man will bring her in her femininity and allow her. That's conditional femininity. You're
right,
either
right,
feminine or you're not. That's your dominant
exactly,
energy, or it's not.
right,
There's certain situation that's going to require you to be, and as for guys, if he's with his baby, that's going to require him to tap into his feminine side, his nurturing side. He's still dominant masculine though. He's
right,
still a dominant masculine man. With women, if you are a dominant feminine woman, it's going to require you to show your masculine side in certain situation. But I think the disconnect is we lead with the opposite side, and we think we can do the flip. We think we can be or dominant as a woman, be your dominant masculine self, and then tap into your femininity side when it's appropriate. But so we're doing it backwards. If you see where I'm going with that.
yeah. I think I hear what you're saying. I tend to think it's like, to your point. Okay, for example, it's possible. I think it's possible to lead as a woman and still be a woman. Never have to leave your feminine frame, if you will, or never have to. You can lead as a woman. You can get things done. You can be maybe aggressive in a certain sense, but still be a woman. I think sometimes women have been taught that they, in order to get things done, they actually have to be like a man in that space. And me personally, I think that's a miseducation. I think, if you, because if you have, let's say you have leadership capabilities, or let's say you're really good at finances, or you have certain giftings, you can still do that thing, but do it as a woman. Don't go and try to put on masculine traits that you're not, or try to act like, to your point, you are fully masculine. Because I think that's where sometimes it gets tricky. And so I tend to think, even when men have to be, maybe they have to be more general. To your point, you're talking about kids, or
Mhm,
raising
mhm.
raising kids, or whatever it may be. I think you can still do those things and operate on those things, but still be settled in, oh, I'm a
Be
woman.
in your masculine trait,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Hmm.
like, and to clarify,
Right.
you are that energy. You are a dominant feminine energy, but then you exhibit some masculine traits
Right.
when needed. So a masculine trait is to be assertive. When needed to be assertive, you're assertive. That doesn't mean that you're automatically masculine because you're assertive. It just means that you're showing a masculine trait in that time. You still stand in your femininity and you still hold your femininity, but you're showing a masculine trait at that time. That's why I said there's two sides to this question depending how you look at it.
Totally. Totally. Also, okay, so for those of you who are on, please get the likes up. Also, shout out to Big Mac for the super sticker. And I see Raw. I don't want to mess up that, butcher that last time. I'm sorry. I see, ladies, will one of you mind doing a reaction video of Shahara Ali's 1991 interview on vibrations? Also, look in the value system on Secure. I will write that down. I will write that down. Um, Again, for those of you who are on, please get the likes up. Tag anybody on this discussion who you think may find it interesting. We are talking about double standards.
Mhm.
It's double standards in relationships in the Black community, things like that. Oh, also, I see another super chat in. I see men listen, never think about conditional masculine is okay as a man for yourself. Even gay men know the world has no mercy on men in general. Stay hard.
And
Okay,
it's
thank
so
you for the
funny he said that, especially the last part.
Mhm.
Um, and I, like, this is something that I have been researching too. And I, how gay men approach the masculine and feminine. It's, and we talked about this last night, how it seems as though they're trying to soften our men and toughen up our
Oh,
boys.
definitely.
It's almost as if a
That's,
man is masculine, then that's bad, that's wrong. But it's
yeah,
okay for a woman to be masculine. It's okay for a woman to go into the boardroom and over talk and
right.
be assertive and be rude. It's okay for a woman to be combative and be straightforward and be blunt. But if a man is exhibits those traits, then it's just so wrong. He's toxic masculinity and he's this and he's that. So that's an interesting point.
Well, what's interesting, and I don't want to go to, because that could be a whole another topic. But
Mhm,
I know when I worked in corporate, I felt like because I was a Black woman, and because there were certain stereotypes that are associated with Black women and their attitude, I couldn't act a certain way. I couldn't be direct, or I couldn't confront where maybe a white counterpart could, because I didn't want to be deemed as that angry Black woman, and knew that could get me into trouble. So, I think, I think it, to your point, being race dynamic. I mean, that's a whole different thing, because like, even if you think, okay,
yeah.
okay, how a gay
Mhm.
white man operates versus how a gay Black man operates, or heterosexual, like, it's completely different.
And you know
When you
what?
start taking that into consideration.
And it's good that you said that, because that even brought me back to the point that I made earlier.
Mhm.
I think it's important for us to know how to be assertive, how to speak up while still holding our femininity,
Yeah,
while
of
still
course.
showing that we are feminine. You can speak up, you can check somebody, you can be assertive and have your voice be heard. You don't have to be overly masculine or become dominantly masculine to do that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I think that's truly, it comes down to that. I think it comes down to, who you are. You are who you are wherever you go.
Hmm. Hmm.
That never changes. And so
Hmm.
I think the bigger issue for me is that I hear this conditional femininity. Oftentimes I've heard this used more as an excuse. More
Hmm.
as an excuse to not necessarily have to work,
You know,
or to not
and
have to actually take accountability. And to me, that is the bigger issue behind conditional femininity. It's, are you using this as a way to try to deflect, or to not actually have to take accountability for certain things?
I hear it a lot from masculine women. I hear it a lot from women who don't even know what femininity looks like. Because
Fair.
like women who on the side that I was saying dominant in their femininity, and when it
Mhm.
required to have masculine traits, have it, you never hear them say, oh, I'll be feminine until, or I'll be masculine until. You never hear them say that. These women who claim that they can turn on their femininity when they have a masculine man, they don't even know what that looks like, because first of all, they can't shut up, they can't be quiet, they just have to talk, and they have to compete with these men. So to your point, I agree. Like,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for the $20 super chat, Torenzo. I see I've studied neuro linguistic programming and my own psychology, like standing in front of a mirror after retiring from military, and was curious to know has been discussed among our people to break this spell. Okay. Okay, I'm trying to figure out. Is this a question? Are you referring to break the spell of what conditional femininity? Leave your yeah. Help me understand the question a little bit more, if you don't mind. But in the meantime, I'm going to move on to the next
oh, I
question.
think I understand what his question is
Okay.
saying.
Okay.
Like
Yes.
the foot, and I might be wrong, Teresa, correct me.
Okay.
Standing in front of a mirror after retiring. Is it standing in front of the mirror to actually acknowledge, like, see where you're at, see your flaws, take accountability, to be self-aware? If you're thinking, if we were to look at ourselves for who we really are, would break the spell of the divide in the Black community? If I think.
Okay. Now that makes sense. So you're talking about being basically introspective, having an honest,
Mhm.
candid look of where am I at? Where?
If
Yes.
that will break the spell. And 100%, I think self-awareness is lacking in our community on both sides, but I think majority on the women's side, because again, for so long we were told we're queens, we're princesses. Oh yeah, he said
Okay,
yes, to
you
look
have to
at
look at
ourselves.
yourselves. No, I mean that's step one. Step one
Hmm.
is just if you're familiar with like a 12-step program, if ever done that or known anybody who's done that, like that's like first step really is kind of like is basically acknowledging that there's a problem and that you have a need for a God, a power that's greater than you. That's so for me, it's like looking in the mirror and being like, oh, I'm broken or oh, I'm messed up here. You have to do that because if you don't ever think there's a problem or if you don't ever think you're sick, you're not going to go to the doctor. You know what I mean? So,
And
I,
Les Brown always says, a man convinced against his will is of the same idea still. So if you can't look in the mirror and say, listen, I need change, I need to do this, self-awareness is top, is key. It's the most important thing that's needed in our community. And I think that's what's lacking. Because, and again, going back to the point of these women who swear they can turn on their femininity when needed, when required, like, you cannot.
that's a button.
Is
That's
a
what I'm saying.
switch.
Like it's not.
And then to your question, they're expecting these men to be masculine by the initial interaction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Him just seeing her, they're expecting him to approach her, to plan the date, to text first, call first. All these, they're expecting masculinity from this man and the initial interaction, but he's supposed to wait and hold up for your femininity. That doesn't make any sense.
Right. Now this takes me to my next question. So resting. First of all, what do you think of resting in your femininity? What do you think of that idea? Are you
Resting,
agree with it?
resting in your femininity. I
Are you
think.
agree with it?
Uh, I never really thought about it. I just like resting in your femininity.
So, right. So I'll explain to you what I've seen.
Hmm.
I hear this idea. Anytime I've heard this talked about, and I actually, yeah, I myself am still trying to get an idea about it because to me it doesn't make sense fully. But I think from what I understand, to be resting in your femininity is this idea that basically I'm just going to kind of rest in who I am, and then things are just going to kind of like happen. The masculine force is just going to make things happen. Now, to me, the issue behind that is it basically sounds like a pretty way to say I shouldn't have to do work.
Mm,
So,
you see, so it depends on how you interpret it. To me, resting in your femininity was like, how can you rest into something that you are? Like, you don't have to rest into. That's just who you are. Even if And okay, so one of the pushback that we always get is women had to be masculine because the men wouldn't step up. Like, no, even if you had to go out and work 5 jobs, you should have still been feminine because your grandma was still, my grandma had to walk from the riverbed up to the house with a bucket of water on her head. She was still feminine. That doesn't mean, so when you say resting in your femininity, it seems as though like they're choosing, kind of tying into the topic. That's how I interpret it, kind of tying in back to the topic that you just mentioned. It's like they choose to be like they're sit, and as you say, resting is like, oh, I'm not doing anything, I'm
Like I'm not
feminine.
doing anything. Like femininity, and to your point, I think you hit the nail on the head because you're like your mother was working, your grandmother was working, but they were still feminine.
We're still
And
feminine,
I
yeah.
think there's some idea today that says that equates femininity to not having to work. And I'm like, yeah, maybe back if you were like in the 18th century, right, where slavery was happening, that was a mode of production, and the richest of the rich didn't have to work; they were a leisure class. But I'm like, first of all, you're not white, so that wouldn't have been you. Second of all, most women in all capacities, even if you think of queens, if you want to go to the whole black queen idea, they had responsibilities.
Yeah,
They had, there was coronation rights. There were different things that they were supposed to maintain politically. So they weren't just like sitting on a couch all day getting their nails done. Like feminine.
exactly.
So I'm just like,
You know,
what?
and you are so right. And this is a really good topic we're about to touch on, because I think a lot of these women think that, oh, they fight against paying bills in their household. They fight against helping out financially, because then you can't be feminine if you're helping bills. You can't be feminine if you have to. When it's just like, but it's the lack of understanding of femininity. You're muted. It's the lack of understanding of femininity, and then thinking that, yeah, you're good. It's the lack of understanding of femininity and thinking that femininity just means that. Oh, and you know what it is? You remember when the pandemic just hit and all of these level up pages were telling you, oh, to do your facial and do your hair and wear pink and wear lipstick, and they're interpreting femininity as just that. And that's not what it is. It's the
Not at all.
misunderstanding of femininity. And these women who think as though, oh, I don't want to be lazy, I don't want to just sit there, then they're thinking, oh, I'm not going to be feminine either. Like, self-awareness and knowledge have to happen in our community for us to change.
I mean, that's just like step one. I thank you for the 4.99 super chat. I see it's hard to rest in your natural self when the world is telling you to be otherwise. The social programming is strong. Facts.
Hmm.
Facts. Absolute facts. And to your point, um, I mean, our mothers, our grandmothers, our great grandmothers, they all worked. I mean, they worked, and they were feminine. They were doing those things, and so I don't understand why femininity and work seem to be like, I don't know, they seem to be like an opposing idea. But I'm like, no, you can still be feminine and still work because that's just called being an adult.
Exactly, exactly. And you're
Still
so
being an
right. And this is such a good topic that you're touching on, because a lot of these women will fight back and say, oh, I'm not going to be feminine for a man who is not paying 100% of the bill. Which, and then I really want to emphasize, femininity is not something that you can choose to turn on and turn
It's
off.
not. It's not.
Femininity is something that you are and something that you choose to just
Mhm,
be.
mhm.
So there's no
Well,
way, like, for you to say, oh, I'm just gonna turn off my femininity and I'm gonna be masculine now. It's like, come on, come on.
yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. So, I mean, I think this is already pretty self-explanatory, but I mean, do you think men would be allowed to rest in their masculinity?
I
I'm
wouldn't
just
use the
thinking
word
about it
rest.
because
I
that's what
wouldn't
I'm
use the
thinking.
word
I'm like,
rest.
for all these women who want an equal 50-50 partnership, if a man's like, okay, I'm going to rest my masculinity today, you go pay all the bills.
Yeah.
Because I'm the man in this house. I'm the head of this house, and whatever I say goes. So you go pay the bills, and also go clean the house. I'm resting in my masculinity. Do you think that would go over well?
Man, men can't even men can't even express their masculinity how they want to express it without women nagging and women saying this, saying that, saying. It's just like, I think, as I said, I think it's just a misunderstanding, double standards, that topic, the misunderstanding, and wanting men to be a specific way,
Right. That we
wanting
made
men to,
up.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, the
it's not even based
Frankenstein.
upon real life. It's based upon some weird a mixture of Disney and old sitcoms and black shows that weren't even owned or ran or written by black people, by the way. Which total side note, I'm gonna go on a tangent for just a second because I did this video about black love and I had all these people coming here talking about what y'all talking about. Black love has always been portrayed in the media. It's always been portrayed, and I'm just like, you can't take a handful of sitcoms that were owned, funded, and created by white people and then say that that is an equal representation of black love. Like, no, no, stop. Like, if we even go back to some of those shows that we all grew up on, how many of those had stereotypes? How many of those had you go back and you're like, yeah, that's definitely you're definitely feeding into just an old
Mhm,
idea.
mhm,
How many of those were actually created and funded and ran by Black
mhm,
America?
mhm,
None of them. So it's like,
mhm,
stop. You're this is a disingenuous. But
mhm,
don't get me on a tangent. That is a whole nother tangent. So, like I said, those are the kinds of things that we grew up watching, and we use that, unfortunately, sometimes as a barometer of what real life should be versus actually real life.
mhm. And you know what? In this day and age, we're just living in a delusion because social media, and to the super chat that was on the screen, social media is just doing a hell of a thing on society, on our women in society, where we are, our expectations is ridiculous. We're expecting our men, going back to the point, we creating these men, what social media telling us, oh, if he's not doing this, then it means this. It can't just be that the man just
Right.
busy. I think I was watching a clip from Mr. Please Act Right, his great channel, and the young lady was just highlighting a bunch of things like, oh, if he does this, then it means this, and if he does this, and it's like, suppose the man is just tired, suppose he doesn't want to. Sometimes you're just not in the mood to talk to somebody that day.
Right.
So you could be watching the game. We know how men get with the game, especially if it's a good game that they like, you know.
No, definitely. It's better to just leave. Go hang out with your friends. Go.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Unless you're into sports. I've never been to sports minded person.
I've never been a sportsman either. So when it comes to
Yeah.
the game, especially basketball, I just let him be and just mind my business.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. 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 So, for those of you who are on, please get those likes up and tag anybody on this discussion who you think might find it interesting. We are talking about double standards.
Mhm.
So, on to the next question. So, do you think more women should propose to men?
Man, I don't. Okay, let me leave by saying,
Don't women
yeah,
want
they want
to see
equality. They
equal?
want
Yeah.
equality, right?
So,
You
I mean,
see,
what do you think?
these women, all right. I mean, I'm not proposing to a man. I'm not. That's just me. But I, I'm not over here fighting for equality, so it's okay if it's okay. But these certain things that they're expecting from a man, certain things that they're demanding from men, they would never do, and they're looking down at women who are doing it. Like, these women are fighting. Like, they don't realize that when they're saying, oh, women and men are equal and you should treat us equal and whatever, they're not thinking about the small things, like propose to him, okay, pay for the first date, okay, buy the flower. They're not thinking about those things. They're just thinking of the bigger picture, like, oh, I want a voice, my voice needs to be loud too, and don't mansplain anything to me, and like, they're not thinking about the small things.
Yeah, so basically what you just described, so we talked about conditional femininity. Now this is called conditional equality. So equality that only applies when it's in my benefit. That's basically what you just because to your point again, these modern relationships that I think many that is promoted so much, it requires responsibility on both parts. And I think the challenge is how are you and one idea and one sentence promoting being a boss babe, you know what I mean, promoting level up, promoting being strong, and then also at the same time promoting resting in your femininity, because I'm like, to me those don't go together. And then by the way, you
Again,
don't
they don't. They don't.
they
And
don't
I think
they don't.
women want to create their fairy tale and then expect men to fall in line and just and just play a part. And that's how we see men. We see men as just a character in our story. It's our story. It's all about us. Even if you look at how they treat weddings, it's all about the brides.
Oh,
The groom is
100%.
just there. The groom just show up. Make
He
sure you
just
show
shows
up on
up.
time and say the
He
right
just
name,
shows up.
right? Just show up.
Right.
But and that this is how we go into to the world and treat relationships and treat marriages as if, it's all about the woman, happy wife, happy life, whatever the woman says go. And then you see it here. They conditional equality. They choose what they want to be equal at. They choose, okay, men are supposed to do this, this, and this, but it's okay if I still do this, this, and this. Men are supposed to pay 100% of the bill, but at the same time, I'm not going to wash, cook, and clean. I'm not 1950s. It's like, and they
But you
lack
gotta
the
choose a side.
self-awareness.
You
They
gotta
lack
choose a
self-awareness.
side.
They don't see it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Thank you for the $20 super. I think that's a super sticker. Or no, chat. I see absolutely not, not, not. So to the question, should more women propose? That is a emphatic no. Shanita, I see I grew up without a present father, so a safe place to rest my femininity is essential. Masculinity will cool it out. When you grow up like that, you really have to top into it, and a good man helps. Thank you for this for the super chat. And I see Eugene Steele. Some women have these unrealistic expectations. This is why a couple of women stopped matchmaking. Bingo. I mean, it just comes
Mm-hmm.
down to unrealistic
Mm-hmm.
expectations. And I think validation without discipline or without conditions is unhelpful. And you made this point earlier where you're like, for so long we've been validated in certain spaces in certain ways, and it's come without any conditions, or it's come without any constructive criticism, that now
Mm-hmm.
you've kind of created big babies. I don't know how to say that better. When I say big babies, I'm meaning people who, it's like this idea that like I should be able to get whatever I want, and if I don't, then you're the problem. That's how
Mm-hmm.
kids think. That's how babies think. So
100%.
I think I think it's it's good to be validated, and it's also good to have that also be constructive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a good parent, a loving parent. They're gonna love on their kid. They're gonna give them, have endless love for them, but they're also gonna have conditions and standards and say, hey, but I love you unconditionally, but this is, if this happens, this is gonna be the result. And um I think it's good and helpful and constructive for for a woman, especially women who are of age who actually want to see better results, to know that like, hey, you can't just have it all. Like, we have to actually know what does it mean to be an adult. Like, and that means that, yeah, you're not going to get your way all the time. It doesn't mean that the world, the world owes you anything on the platter, especially in the context of relationships. It doesn't mean that you are the prize, meaning you aren't supposed to do anything. And that's the expectation. Like, that's really, really bad teaching. And that's just narcissistic. So
I was about to say it is. It is, and it's selfish. It's extremely selfish because you're in a relationship with someone and you're thinking, "Oh, me. However I go." Even going back to the whole wedding example, it's all about you. It's all about the pride. He's the
yeah,
one expected to pay for the wedding, but it's your day.
mhm,
That's
no,
selfish. It's
absolutely.
narcissistic tendencies. And we have it, we to the point where childlike behavior, to the point where it's all about me, it's all about me. And things don't go their way, then they come and screaming, calling names, trying to shame, trying to do this. It's like, come on, grow up. We claim that we're so educated, we claim that we make more than our black men, and we're the most whatever LLCs,
It's not true.
and we can't even think like adults. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's the thing about it. Education, and that is another topic for another time. But education teaches you how to be a good worker or how to be a good slave
Mhm.
in certain components. It doesn't teach you how to be a free thinker. And it certainly doesn't prepare women how to actually be wives and raise families. So while
Mm-mm.
I'm not against college or against a woman getting their degree. I think it's important to know what you're getting when you're going in there. That doesn't
Mhm.
mean that that's going to raise your value in the relationship or sexual marketplace. It doesn't mean that you're going to be more prepared for interpersonal relationships. That's a completely different thing. You go to school to have the piece of paper to learn how to be a worker for someone else. That's the purpose of most colleges, to teach you how to be a worker for someone else.
Most
Right.
definitely. It doesn't even teach you
So
how to do. It doesn't even teach you how to work with someone, because you
No,
remember when you were in college and you had to do
not
group
at all.
work, y'all just split off and do your piece and then
Mhm.
come back together and present it. It
Oh,
doesn't even teach you how to be like how to have relationships and teach and work with people even in a professional setting.
right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, okay, on to the next question. In your opinion, do BBWs or big beautiful women, do they celebrate big beautiful men?
You know the answer to this, but hey, we're talking about double standards. Of
Don't you
course
know? I
not.
need you to educate me, please. Educate me, girl. You know, I don't know nothing.
Of course not. You know why? You know why? As we said earlier, men are held at a higher standard, higher expectations than women. Women should come to the table and just be. We should just be however we are, at whatever weight we are, however much fat we have. But men are expected to be the best version of themselves. Kevin says a lot. You know, black men are expected to build Wakanda just to get a first date, just the first, not even, okay, let's scratch a
You
first
said
date, just to
something
get a
right there.
smile,
You said something right there.
just to get a smile from black women. He's expected to go above and beyond. He's expected to be the best of the best. If Do you think there would have been a male equivalent to Lizzo, where people that just
I
I
shouldn't
mean,
be laughing.
I mean, you know, where people just accept him, body positivity. We don't, none of these body positivity campaign talks about men
Yeah,
and
not
men
at all.
body or nothing. No.
Never.
And then let's not even talk about their weight. Let's talk about the height. How these women talk about men height and shame
Yeah,
short men and say short men this, short men that.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's something they can't change. That's something they can't control.
Right.
Like, come
Yeah.
on.
I wish, I wished body positive included short men and overweight. I mean, first of all, just men, period. Let's just start there because body
Mm,
positive, men are not included in that conversation. But if it
mm-mm,
was up to me, I'm like, yeah, we should see more shorter men. We should see more rounder men. Like if we really are trying to create a culture of being more accepting. Now, I mean, that gets complicated because, like, okay, at what point now are you being health phobic and
mhm,
promoting bad health? Because while I certainly agree that there's room to be more accepting of different body types, and I understand that, culture, the fact you got women doing BBLs, got changing their bodies, risking their life to try to change how they look. Yeah, there are unrealistic standards. So I'm open to that changing, but it's like at what point does it become okay, now we've gone so far to the other side that now we don't have any standards. And that's unhealthy. Because if
I
you're
mean,
700 pounds, I don't care how beautiful you think you look in that bikini, you're 700 pounds, you could die wearing that.
and that's why I don't agree that obesity, I see the comment that says you know, short and obese men should be included in body positivity. For both men and women, I don't think
I agree.
obesity should be considered body positivity. There's nothing positive about being obese. There's nothing positive about being those deep on short men.
No, you know what's so funny? Zamika's comments. I love short husband don't sleep. So I mean, Obsidian. He did a whole chapter dedicated to this, where he talked about how I think he has an article too. He talked about how short black men statistically make better husbands. No, he didn't. I think not black men. Short men. Period. And he broke it down. He was like, they tend to make more money. They tend to be more loyal. They tend to do more housework. He had this whole like breakdown. So and like some of my closest friends, like I think there's like two of my like closest friends are married to men who are shorter, not just short, like shorter than them, and
Hmm.
they have great marriages. So I don't
Yes.
besides
I mean,
height, that's
I don't think that a height, and okay. So I need to even say what I was about to say. I don't think a height determines the person's personality or
not at
determines, you know,
all. No,
the
no, no.
quality. I think their weight does though, because how you treat your body says a lot about how the person you are. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. If you
Right.
just treat your body, you eat anything, you don't care about your appearance, you don't care about your body, that a person's weight says a lot more about them than their height. So that's why I don't believe their weight. I don't believe obesity. I don't believe big women should be in this body positivity movement unless they're working out and they're trying to become healthy and they're trying to be the best version of themselves. But we have Lizzo who's just sitting there on her 300 pounds, not doing anything, and then she's a body positivity. What is positive about being 300 pounds at 5'8"?
Well, she did do that workout video, but then she was shamed for being fat
Yeah,
phobic, and then she did I think a green juice for like
yeah,
a few days, and then she was also shamed for being. So I'm just
yeah.
like, y'all stop.
Ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Right.
I think if we're talking about body positivity, we should be talking about things that we cannot change
Mm-hmm.
about ourselves, such as a man's height. You know, if you have a big forehead, body positive because you cannot change your forehead. You know, certain things that you cannot change. Just say like, hey, body positivity. We're all made different. Let's embrace our differences. But you're gonna be
Yeah.
body positivity because you decided to eat 5 cheeseburgers in every night for like, come on. What's
No, that's
positive about
facts.
that?
I mean, I mentioned this in another video of mine where when I was an overweight kid. So while
Mhm.
most kids were eating could eat whatever and stay the size of a pencil, I ate and I saw what I ate on my body. So it's like I was an overweight kid. And my family, we were known as a fat family. We would go places and they had names for yes. So it's like I think when I hear women who like kind of complain about how they feel and like the shame of being in a body they don't like I personally identify with that because that was so much of my upbringing, like being the kid in elementary, in middle, and even high school. I'm like, I'm the biggest one in the class, you know what I mean? But it's like, I had to learn how to eat healthy. I had to learn, okay, well, my family's eating like this, we're going here doing that, but if I don't want to look this way, like I have to make changes. If I don't want to feel this way about myself, I need to figure out what I need to do to actually do that. So
You know,
it does require work. It does. And
and
I
that's
think
impressive. You looking at you will never think you were ever
you
fat.
yeah.
You look.
No, I think the biggest I was like 170 by the time I was in 6th grade. So
Mm.
I was a pretty big one. I was a pretty big girl, and I know like my family in general were just bigger people, which doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. That's what I'm saying. I'm more accepting if it's like, hey, I'm naturally bigger. Like I know there are
Mhm.
certain cultures where they're naturally bigger, some are naturally smaller, but it's like me. I had bad eating habits. My family at the time, now they're a lot better, but at the time there was no understanding of nutrition, and so it's like, yeah, I can't say body positive because I sat down and decided to eat ice cream for dinner. That's not body positive. That's
That's
me deciding to eat ice cream for dinner. I need to do better. You know
exactly,
what
exactly,
I mean?
exactly. And I
So
think this whole body positivity movement,
right.
regardless of what the intention was when it started, it has gotten to allowing women to stay mediocre, allowing women to stay
Oh
fat,
yeah.
and just
Yeah.
accepting it,
And
just
that's
accepting
unhealthy.
their weight. That's unhealthy. And we're using, in the name of body positivity, we're killing ourselves by saying, oh, somebody's gonna like it. All these curves, they're intimidated by these curves when you can't walk up a flight of stairs. Seriously?
I actually think I don't want to go too much in a tangent, and I don't want to be conspiracy theorist, but I just sometimes I think if that's kind of the goal, because it's, I mean, you got people out there like Bill Gates openly saying like, hey, we need to figure out ways to decrease the population. Like this is not a conspiracy theory. This is something he has openly said. So I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere down the line, so some powers would be there like, hey, if we get people killing themselves through what they eat, then that kind of helps with this population issue we have. That's a whole other topic.
And it's so crazy.
So,
That's really good, but it's so
mhm,
crazy to the point where they don't even have to force it on people. They're
mm,
just like, oh, let's just put it there, and they're gonna just do it themselves
right,
because they're not
absolutely.
forcing us to eat the fast food or forcing us to not
They're
work
not.
out.
They are
We're
not.
just making the choices, and then we say, oh no, it's body positive because it's fat phobia. If you tell me that I need to start eating better.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so thank you, Snuggles, for the $5 super chat. I see I am here as a promise. Wait, I'm here as promise. Now, what is the situation with the ladies mistaking correction with someone trying to insult them? How did that happen? That is a good question. That is a really good question. I mean, we kind of touched upon it earlier, where I just think at the end of the day, we grew up in a generation where women just weren't allowed to criticize mama. They weren't allowed to even have any constructive conversation with mama, and I think that's kind of just seeped into what's going on today, where it's like any any mention of the fact that women, black women in particular, aren't perfect just seems like a direct attack, because we just didn't grow up in a culture where we were necessarily held accountable in certain ways. um and then I see this other super chat. Women are liability. There will never be anything more important than your higher purpose as a man. Men chase championships, women chase champions. I do agree. I do agree that women, even ones that claim that they don't aren't pick me's behind closed doors, are pick me's for the right men. They're pick me's for the men that hit on their bells and whistles. That is another video coming up. Stay tuned, y'all. No. um, okay, so let's move on to the next question. So, in response to the body positive movement, should we start a broke positive movement for men, so that they don't feel insecure about having financial struggles or being rich? Do we
I'm loving these questions because I
broke
it's just
positive?
like
What do you guys think?
no
Do you
next.
guys agree? Disagree? Because I think, and again, in the spirit of all things equal, if we're going to have a body positive, I think there needs to be a subsequent broke positive movement so that these men and women can start to come together. Hey, maybe we would actually have more marriages if we started to see
Mhm.
broke positive men and body positive women really coming and being celebrated and coming together and be like, forget about all these standards, forget about education standards, monetary standards, work standards, forget about body standards. We're just going to love each other because we're human. Maybe we would actually see more marriages. What do you think?
Most definitely. I think if people I think if people just accept who they are in terms of Poor Man Podcast. Shout out to Poor Man Podcast. Great content creator, but he always say uh, um a woman's weight is her wallet. So your weight is equivalent to what?
Okay.
Man's finances.
Hmm.
Kevin Samuels triggered a lot of women because he put a mirror up to their face and
Hmm.
showed them, listen, you are demanding a man to pay all your bills. You're demanding a man to make six figures, to live here, to provide this lifestyle. Are you qualified for this man? Not meaning do you match his income, but can you fit in a size 4? And a lot of these women can't. So when we talk about broke positivity, these women who are these
Poor
women who
positive.
are pushing these
I'm a
women who
poor
are
positive activist. Sorry.
these women who are pushing body positivity need to pair up with a man who is pushing broke positivity, because that's your equal. That's who you are. And to answer your question, yes, I think if we were to become self-aware and identify, okay, what am I qualified for? I am a 300-pound woman who does not want to change and who want to be positive. Let them accept me at my positive self. Then I'm qualified for a broke positive man, a man who is not going to want to pay all bills, who, if somebody's breaking him downstairs, he's going to nudge me and have me go downstairs. A man who's not going to want to protect, provide, or lead me, and keep it fair and balanced.
Right. I see. Yeah. I see this comment. Most people are broke. And that's the point, because most people are broke. Just like in America, most people are overweight. And I'm saying, look, forget about all these standards that people don't live up to. Let's just forget about standards and just have people love where they're at. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if women that by and large would go for that, but I'm like, to me, that would be an equal equivalent because whether you're not, we like it. The reality is, a woman, their social currency is their looks, and men, their social currency is
Is there
their
one?
pocketbook. That it just is
Mhm.
what it is. I didn't
It
create the
is what
rules.
it is.
Now we can talk about how to change it if we want to change it, how to build another system. That is another conversation. But that's what it is today. So to your point, the easier we accept that, or we recognize that's where it is, then you can figure out how to move accordingly. But we don't do.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Oh, go ahead. No, no.
No, but I was just gonna say we don't do ourselves any good when we just decide to overlook the facts or overlook things for what they are. That's
And
how.
then we overlook it on one side. We
Right.
overlook it on our
Mhm.
side. Like, it is what it is. Facts are that a
Mhm.
woman's looks are equivalent to a man's wallet. That's facts. But
Right.
then we want to say no, they shouldn't accept me. They shouldn't want me for my looks. They shouldn't want me for this my dress size. But at the same time, we want to maintain us wanting them for how they can provide,
Right.
what they can provide. Like, let's keep it fair and balanced. We want equality, so let's keep it equal.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Now, so we are getting down to our last question. And this has been an interesting conversation. Again, for those of you who are on, please get the likes up and tag anybody on this. Um, Question you think may find it interesting. So, okay. So, in your opinion, if women have been the matriarchs or the rulers of Black culture, then why are men blamed for the negative state of the Black community?
Do you know what these questions remind me of? Are you
Mhm.
familiar with the channel? Oh, I'm drawing a blank. It's complicated. Are you familiar with that channel?
I feel like I've heard of it, but I have not checked out. I
It's a
haven't seen it.
really good channel. It's a really good channel. He
Okay.
asks questions like this that will get you thinking, like, that's a good point. 100% true. Going back to the point where don't blame mama, what mama say goes, mama rules. Women are the first teachers of the kids, but then
That's true.
ironically we turn around and blame men for the disaster, the destruction that's in the, like, where that makes sense. Make it make sense. Like, it does not. We like to, and going back to the first initial point that we made, we like to get all the praises. I mean, this is something we're observing in our culture. We want to get praise for doing the basic things, paying our bills, paying our car notes, having our own apartment. We want to get praise for that. But when anything negative happen, we don't want to take any of the blame. So it's all the praises, none of the blame. We want to
Right.
just put all the blame on black men. But black men shouldn't get praised for anything when in reality black
Right.
men are doing way more than black women.
Right. Right. Well, and and that, I mean, that hits on, yeah, that hits on many points, which I think at the end of the day, I think a common foundational belief among modern relationships is that women shouldn't have to do much, if anything.
Hmm.
He should just take me as I am because I am enough.
I'm the
And
prize.
I'm the prize, and that not requiring any really accountability, not really requiring any self introspection, and that being a horrible setup and a perfect way to create a imbalance in a relationship.
Hmm.
And I think also it just shows how, I mean, like I said, a lot of people are just like have just zero understanding of anything. It's like, have you ever read a book? Like, have you ever read history? Because I'm like, again, if people actually understood like 2% of Black history, a lot of these dumb conversations we had wouldn't even exist. This whole Black men don't build. It's like, huh? Like, where have you been?
And you know
Like
what? They
where,
all have.
like were you like raised under a rock? Who were you listening to? Now, yeah, if you are getting your history, because I've literally heard this. I've literally heard some YouTube content creators quote white supremacist, like literally quote, sociological studies, or they'll take a random quote from like a racist sociologist and then try to use that to apply to Black men or Black people. And I'm like, that's a bad idea. Like,
Mhm.
don't talk to somebody who hates you about who you are. Like, you should probably figure that out for yourself. But I don't know. I just think sometimes just having like a basic understanding of like what's actually going on would eliminate a lot of these really, to me, really silly situations and silly conversations. And what it exposes, I think, at the end of the day, is that there are a lot of people, a lot of women, a lot of Black women in particular, who we don't like ourselves, we don't feel comfortable with ourselves, and because of that, it's hard for us to take any constructive criticism because it feels like rejection. It
And it
feels.
highlights our flaws.
Mhm. Right,
Hmm.
right. And so, to your point earlier, it's like before there could be even an ounce of any change or any hope for like improvement, there has to first be an understanding of like, hey, I'm
Hmm.
messed up here. Like, there's something going on in the way I'm thinking. There's something going on in the way that I'm processing. And I think until you can even get to that step, then it's like we're not going to be getting anywhere. You're just going to be making money off of just spitting propaganda, which
Hmm.
that's what a lot of people are doing.
And you know what? If I find that a lot of the pushback, it's the same talking points. It's the same. Oh, black women make more than black men. Black women were educated more than black men. Black men are incarcerated. It's like it's the same talking point, the exact same talking point. So clearly, they're all getting it from that echo chamber that they're in. No one is stepping outside to do their independent research. No one is actually doing the finding out
Right.
facts, and then
Right.
surrounding themselves with people who are going to actually bring both sides. Because even if, let's say, what they're saying is true, it's like, okay, and then what? Should we just sit in that problem? Should we just sit with that stats, or should we brainstorm ways
Yeah.
to be better? To, even if we have to help our black men, even if we have to work with our black men to figure out a solution, are we going to just sit there and complain? Or are we going to do something? We claim that we're these strong, independent women. We see our black community suffering and we see our black men suffering. Are we going to step up and
Right.
do something? Or are we just going to sit there and allow them to?
Right. And to your point, if you just do even a little bit of research, you find out a lot of these talking points just are actually not
Inaccurate.
true. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's like, how can you and one end complain and say that oh, we're I mean that's one of the primary tenets of feminism. It's like, okay, we want to see more women getting paid equivalently to men. So how can you say that, but in the same sentence say, oh, but black women are out earning men? So it's like, well, which is it? Are men making more
Exactly.
than you, or are you making more than men? It's
Exactly.
like what, and
Exactly.
so a lot of those talking points, just like you kind of look at them for what they are, and you're like, this is false.
And if you know, if you ask any questions, if you and someone said, I don't remember who said it. I don't remember who said it, but if you let women talk long enough, they eventually reveal themselves. They eventually contradict themselves.
Oh,
Not to be all RP and say like, oh, all woman nature, whatever. But I mean, it's true in these talking points.
oh,
Just
so
have them
much,
talk,
so
and they'll
much.
contradict themselves every other sentence.
I,
And it's
I,
like, you see, when you're not entering these discussions with good faith, to be solution based and to just complain and point fingers and say, oh, I can't do this, I can be feminine if he's not being this. It's just, it makes no sense, and you're just talking in circles, and you're not bringing solutions, you're not offering
right,
any solutions.
right. No, and I think to your point, what we've seen a lot up to this point is basically people working backwards from their conclusion. If you as a
Hmm.
woman have decided men are the problem, black men are the problem, therefore everything you're going to see is going to be through that lens. And I think oftentimes that's what we have. Instead of there being an open and honest conversation of, let's just look at the facts before we try to come to conclusions. Just look at the facts. Let's look at the way things are. People have already decided in their mind, oh, black men are bad or men are bad, and then whatever they're saying at that point is going to be it's going to level up to that primary theory, right? Which is men are bad, and it's just like, yeah, you're just making up stuff. You're just trying to prove your
Most
overall
of
point. So
most it's there's a term for it. Oh, I can't remember. um oh, I can't remember when you're confirming your beliefs. So even if it's inaccurate, and even if there are data and statistics to back up, I can't count how many times I've had conversations with women who would say things like, oh, I don't care about the facts, I don't care about the statistics, this is how.
then they actually don't want to change. When I get to the point, I was like, okay, there's this area in my life that I'm not seeing, that I don't feel I'm not seeing fruit. I had to look in the mirror and be like, what's going on? I had to actually say what is truthful. You know what I mean? And that's anybody before they actually want to change or move forward, they have to be like, where am I at today? And if you are hell bent on not wanting to look at the truth, if you're hell bent on not wanting to say I'm sick, again, why would you go to the doctor? You're not going to the doctor if you think you're well. So it's like there has to be a place where like women can know it's okay to be like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not strong, I'm not
Exactly.
independent, I'm not happy, I feel messed up, I hate myself, I have a bad relationship with myself, I have a bad relationship with God, I have a bad relationship with men. Like, it's okay to say those things, but you have to start there before there can be any talk of change. And you can't deflect and try to blame it on other people.
But I think we're undermining just how much strength that takes, how much maturity that takes, and it's not easy. It's
It's
not
not.
easy acknowledging that, hey, I am the problem. I'm the one, and I can't sit here and say that, it was a light switch that turned on one day, and I'm like, wait, I'm being too masculine. Let me let go
Mhm.
off of these masculine traits. It wasn't. It was learning and pain and crying and doing all these things that require you to get ugly to figure it out.
Absolutely.
And a lot of women want to put on this front. That social media has damaged our minds so much, so we think that what we're seeing on social media, the person we're trying to give off, the portray, the when we take pictures. How many women have you ever seen taking a pictures with a filter, and then it's going to say, oh, I woke up like this, natural beauty. Sis, you have on a filter. That's where
You've got
we've
a
gotten.
hundred photos, 100 photos in their phone of that same position.
With the same taking
Literally.
pictures at an angle, talking about, oh, I'm fit, when she's hiding her stomach, saying, oh, I'm fit. So we post these things on social
Facts.
media and really think that that's our reality.
Right.
Really think that. So we are not. If you think that you're all that, if you think that you're a 10 because your social media, your Snapchat filter is telling you that you're a 10, you're not gonna do the work to look in the mirror and say, oh,
Right.
well, maybe I'm not a
Absolutely.
10. You're not, because
Absolutely.
you really think you're a 10. Yeah, the waist trainer, they'll really wear the waist trainer until they
Mhm.
can't breathe
That's
and then
facts.
really think that they're fit. Like, come on.
That's facts.
Come
Well,
on.
and I think you make a good point to where it's really it it is really hard to come to the point to say, "Hey, I'm the problem." I will say for me, I I think I attribute so much of my desire to change and the courage to change. I mean, that for me personally just came from having a strong relationship with God and knowing like, okay, feeling that safety of being like, God created me for something good. And because of that security, then I could look in the mirror and say, oh crap, there's some flaws here. Oh crap, there's some things that need to change. But that doesn't change God's love for me. And for me, like just having a really, really strong spiritual center and a strong relationship with Christ is like, that's what really gave me the courage to be like, okay, whoa, I messed up here. I made mistakes here. Because it's like the truth is supposed to set you free. I think what people don't understand is they feel like, oh, if I made this mistake, then I'm that mistake. And it's like,
Mm,
no, actually, when you face that thing, that's that's a part of a relationship with God, even like it is a transformation, you going getting better and better. It's you being like, oh, I'm free from that thing that was holding me down. I'm free from that thing that was keeping me in bondage, my mindset, my ideas, my bad behavior. And so it becomes a liberating thing when you understand that it's not meant to diminish you in any way. And I
mm.
think that there needs to be an understanding of that. But to your point, it does really take a lot of courage.
And it's really great that you said that, because when I became aware, it was on my spiritual journey too. It was
Mhm.
in me realizing that there's a greater, there's I'm not it. There's a greater source. There's more to what I can see. And in understanding that, you kind of separate yourself from, you in understanding that there is a greater being, you kind of separate yourself from the ego. And the
Mhm.
ego is what's going to allow you, the ego is what's going to prevent you from actually getting face to face with your truth. Because if you have the ego there, you'll never see your flaws. And in acknowledging that there's a higher being, in acknowledging there's a God, and I'm not advocating for any specific religion, it's whatever you want to believe in, but in acknowledging that there's something more than you, something outside of you, within you, but something bigger than you. It will really humble you and allow you to get to that place where you can really, really shed all the preventive
Mhm.
thing, whatever is going on, the fake thing that you're trying to do, and really get to your true self. But you made a really good point. I think a lot of times when we identify our flaws, then we attach our self or personality to this flaw, and you have to get to the space where you realize, okay, this isn't me, this is just how I was acting, this is just how I was conditioned to believe, but this isn't me. And until you get to that point, you won't be able to see the change.
Right. No, yeah. Like I said, having a relationship with God has been
Mm-hmm.
crucial. Having a relationship with Christ and being like, okay, like I came from you, so it's like that's my true identity, not my mistakes. And I don't want to that could take me on another tangent, but I want to check this super chat out. I see Raw. It says Black men are the dominant group of men in 40 nations. We are the original group of men. We are the first fathers on earth. Black men are strong and wise. Thank you so much for the super chat. Also, I want to thank all of you guys who have been on, who have been chatting. Also, want to be mindful of time. Chantel, I know you have we're right at that mark, and we've gotten through all the questions. So I don't know if you have any other thing that you would like to say or mention before we wrap things up.
Um, no, I think this was a really good conversation. I think we touched on so many good points
Uh-huh.
that again, I have to rewatch to really. I think when these conversations are necessary, because when we have these conversations, we're not just sitting here talking. It's something more that we're doing. It's something bigger than we can even see. Um, just even having the courage to talk against the narrative, to talk against what's been going on in society, what's commonly, because we, as we talked about earlier, these content creators, if you want to grow on social media, just turn on your camera and complain about black men, and I guarantee you, your channel will grow. So the fact that we are turning on our camera and doing the complete opposite of what is being pushed and what wants to be highlighted in society, it takes a
Mhm.
lot of courage, and it's just way more than what we can see and what we can even imagine. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, well, thank you again for just for your time and for talking about these different things. It's always a pleasure. Um I see that super chat. Thank you, Awa, for the super chat. Great guest and great conversation. Yes, it was great to have her on. I see Kendra Scott. Would you guys, Danica, Kendra, Kims, and Cure, and the both of you guys be willing to do a four-way panel one day or night? That would be amazing. We have all have things in the works, so just stay tuned. I will say stay tuned, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Without
mean,
further
I swear
ado,
the pick me nation. I'm proud of us for speaking up. I'm proud of us, especially in this just past week. I don't know what
uh-huh,
happened in this past week, but I know for my channel has been like going off
that's
this weekend.
awesome.
I see a lot more just in having a lot more of these conversations. Like
That's
pick me's,
great.
we're starting to speak up. We're starting, and even you, Sade, like in just speaking your truth and not trying to pander to a specific crowd or to hide behind, but in speaking the truth, because we're not sitting here saying that black men are perfect. We're just keeping it fair and balanced, and we're highlighting things
Yeah,
in the community that people are not.
yeah. Like I said, I mean, I talk about a lot of different things on my topic. Obviously, relationships being one of them. But I didn't go in saying like I didn't start saying, "Oh, I'm going to be a pick me advocate." It was just like I'm just on here doing my thing, and then I'm just seeing there's a whole bunch of different mess, and I'm like, this is weird. Like, can we
Yeah.
stop? Like, can we not do this? So, like I said, if that means I'm tagged to pick me, whatever. Like, I'm more about let's just try to have constructive conversations, and let's have fun. So
Mhm, mhm.
all good stuff. But yes, you guys stay tuned. Also, check out her channel if you haven't already. I will be sure to leave her information in the description. And again, I want to thank you for just your time tonight. It was great.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. It's always great chatting with you. You just always drop so much good gems, and these questions are so necessary because, as I say, it gets you thinking, like that is true. So hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully, this conversation will resonate with someone who have those, thought patterns that
Yeah,
whenever we think
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, again, thank you again. And I'm sure we'll have to do this again.
that, most definitely.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, you
Bye,
have a good
chat.
night. So again, I want to thank all of you guys who have been on, who have sent in some love, super chats, comments, everything. Like I said, I want to continue to have these kinds of discussions, continue to have these kinds of conversations. I mean, at the end of the day, I think the first step of any kind of change or any hope for doing better is really admitting, hey, I am broken, admitting, hey, I don't have it all together, maybe I learned something wrong. That does take an incredible amount of courage, and that does take an incredible amount of self introspection. As I said before, I know from me, it came to the point to where I knew, okay, if I'm not seeing truth in my life, if I'm not seeing fruit in my life, then I have to be honest. I have to be honest. And that is where my relationship with God plays a huge role in me being able to be introspective, me being able to look at myself and say, hey, I'm not perfect. Look at myself and say, okay, this aspect that I'm believing, this is what I'm doing, this is a lie. I want to live for the truth. I want to be better. And that's just been one of the great things personally I can say about having a walk with God. One of the great things about me learning more about what does it mean to be a Christ follower is that there is that constant rejuvenation. There is that constant introspection and that constant idea of, okay, I'm getting better. I'm working towards this thing. I am getting rid of the lies. I'm getting rid of all these false ideas and learning to live better and learning to be more effective. And so while it can be scary, I think it can be scary to a certain extent sometimes to do that, especially as a woman and especially in a culture when you are told, hey, you have to be this, you got to be this strong, you got to be that powerful. Just something about just being like, you know what? I don't have it all together. God, I need you. Like I need you in my life. I need help. I need help to get point A to point B. That sometimes those have been some of my most powerful moments in my life when I've just been on my knees praying, being like, God, help me. Like I need help getting past this. I need help moving forward in this. I need help overcoming this and living out something that's better. And so that for me has given me the strength and continues to give me the strength every single day. And while I certainly do not pretend to be perfect because I am not, my hope is that in my journey of change and progress and evolution, whatever it is that I learn, I can share and hopefully impart the goodness that God has given me into you and to all my listeners. So again, I want to thank all of you guys who have just hopped on or just been here hanging out, sent in your super chats, your love, your comments, even your disagreements, because those are necessary also. We're just here to have fun and to have real conversations. Again, stay tuned. I have other collaborations coming up, other hot topics coming up that you do not want to miss. And be sure to check out her channel. And we will talk later. Bye.